The views expressed by the speakers of CamaPlan podcasts are those of the speakers only and may not reflect those of Cama, its members, or employees. Cama does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by these speakers. Professional advisors should be consulted before implementing any options presented. Cama absolutely does not endorse or recommend any individual or organization, including the speakers. Cama, its members, and employees do not accept liability for losses and/or damages arising from errors or omissions within, reliance upon, or any use of the information provided by the speakers. Individuals are strongly encouraged by Cama to conduct their own due diligence before making any investment choices. Cama does not act as, nor offer the services of, an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. If tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other similar expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional should be sought. Hello and welcome back to The Road to Financial Freedom, a podcast that allows experts to share their stories and secrets to unlocking their financial independence. This podcast is brought to you by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator in Ambler, Pennsylvania that is focused on educating investors with different ways to grow their retirement savings faster through alternative investments. And as I'm sure you know by now, we are continuing to record this podcast remotely. I'm Jess Jones, CamaPlan team member and your podcast host. This week, we are sitting down with the founder and president of Lansing Street Advisors, who oversees the delivery of investment, personal finance, and life strategy advice to his clients and their families. With a career spanning over 25 years in finance, he ran trading for a $1.5 billion hedge fund, created and ran a concentrated stock fund, and has helped found a $50 million private real estate fund. He has previously served as a partner and chief investment officer at Fortis Wealth and was partner at Turner Investments, where it served institutional clients and greatly expanded capital. In addition to his financial work and advisory, he is an avid reader and writer. His daily blog and industry newsletter, titled View from the Top, an upcoming book, Top 10 Money and Life Considerations for Millennials, gives investors of all ages a glimpse into marketing trends, technical analyses, and balancing and maximizing income. Please welcome this week's guest, Matt Topley. Thanks for being here today, Matt.
Thanks, Jess. Oh, thank you so much. Great to be here on Election Day in our great country, and certainly a strange 2020. So great to be on the show.
Great, and we're so happy to have you. You know, under normal circumstances, Matt, you and I would be neighbors. You would be just a couple of floors up in the same building. So hopefully when things are back to normal, we'll be able to get a chance to meet in person. But let's start by learning some more about you. Tell me some more about your background, where you were born, grew up, went to school, what you studied, all of those great things that made you, you.
Oh, wow. That's a lot. I'll also leave out the juicy parts. No, just kidding. I've been a lifelong Philadelphian, like a lot of people in Philadelphia. I've been here my entire life. I recently turned 50, so for my entire 50 years, I've been in the Philadelphia area. I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, so that was a huge positive thing. I was extremely lucky that I had two-parent household, World War II era parents. Really instilled in us all patriotism, hard work, education, working class. For people who are unfamiliar out there, typical working class urban neighborhood in the 70s and 80s. I guess picture Queens or Brooklyn if you're thinking in terms of New York. At 50 on reflection, that was one of the single most defining moments of my life. Growing up that way, because we had to work for everything, right? You're just hugely lucky. It breeds some instincts and some street smarts that can't be taught. I remember reading about one of my favorite media celebrities, Tim Russert, who passed away, in his book, Big Russ, that he was super intimidated when he got into the professional world. You know, his dad was a trash man, and he's from Buffalo, and he was super intimidated that he didn't have the credentials to advance himself. And the senator he was working for, told him everything that they know you can learn and everything they can't learn. So that really became a driver for me to learn everything I needed to learn on the finance side. It also ties into my education. I mean, I went to an all-boys school, Father Judge High School in Philadelphia. that was a huge positive too. It allowed us in the 70s and 80s, there was tens of thousands of boys and girls in those types of schools. So in the Philadelphia area, it allowed us to build out a huge network in the professional world. Later, as adults in life, people went to those schools 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And what I talk about in my upcoming book, and I talk about a lot to people, is how important building networks is. That gave me a huge built-in network coming from that background in a city where it was commonplace then. And the school instilled a lot of discipline, and everything in life begins and ends with discipline. And I also went to 3 colleges in the Philadelphia area. So I'm completely Philadelphia from head to toe, I guess you would say. Now that you're asking me these questions, it's really striking. I went to 3 universities in the Philadelphia area. I had to work my way through school, which is a huge positive. And I think for everyone who grew up and went to school that is my age and older, maybe a little younger, that was commonplace for everybody, not just Philadelphia. It was much more commonplace back then to have to work your way through school. I think it's a huge problem now because of how expensive school. It's a lot harder, but I had to work my way through undergrad and multiple jobs. And I had, I went to graduate school twice at night, all hugely positive experiences. So went undergrad, business, MBA, undergrad Holy Family University, MBA, LaSalle University. I needed graduate school. That's me personally. A lot of people don't need it. I just needed it intellectually, socially, emotionally. I was immature, so it was a huge maturing process for me. And then I went to Penn and not Wharton, which is strange in the finance world, and got a degree in organizational leadership. And that was another life-changing experience. That was real learning versus credentialing, and it was getting a master's degree in self-awareness, which is true education. And it also allowed me to go to China, Europe, Canada under the program. So none of that is to be bragging either. It was pure luck that I ended up lucky enough to be in a situation to be able to pay for those things and do those things. And just for me personally, it was a huge maturing process, and it was hugely helpful, those graduate school experiences. So what did I miss? Anything else on growing up?
You have such an interesting, extensive background, Matt. It's really cool to hear just about all the different things that you were able to do from your education and from your upbringing in Philadelphia. My mom is also from the area. She went to school at Holy Family and Temple and things like that. And she completely would agree with you in the fact that there are just some things that can't be taught that I think a place can teach you. So the importance that you put on place in your upbringing is really interesting to me as well. So then how did you get involved in life and financial advisory then? Where did life take that turn for you?
Yeah, it's a perfect segue from growing up in school and everything, because Dan McManus, who grew up on my block and was a social connection, got me into the world of finance. And before advisory, I was a trader for 17 years on one of the busiest trading desks in the U.S., Turner Investment Partners. I was there from $1 billion to $30 billion under management to $30 billion under management. And that was really, the trading world was really the front end of Wall Street. You were really in the sausage factory, crazy busy every day, super intense from 7 a.m. till when the market closed. Used to close at 4, and then after that, trading after hours and everything, it would close whenever trading stopped. But it's just hyper competitive atmosphere. I was extremely lucky to get the job, extremely lucky to be there. It was a similar economy to the economy we had in the U.S. prior to COVID, meaning there was 4% unemployment. People in finance that were in Philadelphia that were more credentialed than me were going to New York. So I was lucky enough to sneak in the back door there and really get the pure hands-on everyday experience, like the Malcolm Gladwell example of 10,000 hours. It was 10,000 hours on steroids. And when you're on the front end like that, generating $100 million in commissions a year, you get to see every Wall Street pitch you can humanly imagine. And, Wall Street's an awesome place, and it's does a ton of great things for America and capital and investors. That's where they meet. But it's also, you have to be extremely careful, just like anything else where there's a lot of money involved. So that kind of experience gave me a PhD in Wall Street BS, right? It really allowed me to, in the second half of my career as an advisor and CIO, protect my clients from a lot of Wall Street offerings that are they win you lose offerings. We try to protect our clients from three things. One is brokered products where they win, my client loses. There's some good broker products, but there's a lot of bad broker products out there. The second one is sexy investments, right? Bitcoin, weed stocks, crazy private investments. So we're trying to protect our clients from sexy investments that are a great story, but you're going to lose all your money. And then third, and most important, and we'll talk about this later, is to protect our clients from themselves, because investing is a psychology game. It's not an IQ game, and we are our own worst enemies. So that experience led to me eventually getting into the advisor world as a chief investment officer. The trading world was changing dramatically. I passionately believed that the advisory world was going to be the fastest growing part of finance. 6-7 years ago when I switched from trading to the advisory world, I thought fiduciaries and independent advisors would continue to explode in the U.S. and the family office thought process would be the fastest growing part of the advisory world. We're still a young country, as hard as that is to believe. There's been a massive amount of wealth created in the last 40, 50 years especially. We have the baby boomers moving to retirement. 2/3 of the wealth in the U.S., I think, is controlled by baby boomers, something like that. So there's going to be this massive wealth transfer. People are working way longer. They're living into their 90s. There's just a massive amount of financial planning that needs to be done that could save families literally millions of dollars if done properly. If done improperly, it could tear families apart. So all these little check the boxes led me to where I am today, which was creating my own firm.
Thank you for sharing that. That is really interesting, Matt. I am so interested in the fact that, the way you talk about you've been involved in some really fast-paced environments like the trading desks, and now you've taken a step back to focus on helping family businesses or family industries protect their financial legacy. So I'm curious, was there anything you talk a lot about in your upbringing, place and the importance of Philadelphia and your neighborhood and high school and things like that and your network? So was there any other event or person or thing that kind of inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, meaning that even when I was working full-time, I owned small businesses. I owned everything, franchises, pub, did 25, 30 real estate transactions, probably around there, 25 or more real estate transactions on my own. So I've always had entrepreneurial endeavors going on while I was partners at other firms. So it was always there. It was always a part of my character traits. I also have, the negative character traits of entrepreneurs that we all entrepreneurs have. I can't sit still. I'm borderline manic. I have a big ego. I love to work sometimes too much. I'm genetically engineered to work. So some of this stuff can sometimes drive my wife and kids crazy, right? So there's good and bad to it. But a general comment, because being an entrepreneur and having a lot of entrepreneur clients and having a lot of entrepreneur friends, entrepreneurs are some of the heroes of American society. And I think that gets lost in the story sometimes. For one reason is that they create all the jobs. 90% of the jobs in the U.S. are small business owners, right? Are created by small business owners. And the business of America is business. I'm blanking on who that quote is, but the business of America is business. And entrepreneurs, most of them maxed out their credit cards or borrowed against their house or took a risk that no one else would take. And that's what's created this awesome economy, and that's what creates all these jobs. So I had a lot of inspiration from always having to work also to become an entrepreneur. We really had a work from an early age, which is nothing but positive. I see the percentage of teenagers in the U.S. is been dramatically falling. The amount of teenagers that have jobs in the U.S., that work in the U.S., I think that's a big negative. I don't think that'll have great long-term consequences, although I'm always positive about the future of the U.S. So hearkening back to that, having to work all the time always, gives someone an entrepreneurial spirit.
Great. So it sounds like you definitely learned a lot of lessons from building that entrepreneurial spirit of your own. So as an investor, as an entrepreneur early on, were there any early success stories or failures as an investor? And, what were some of the lessons you learned from those early successes or obstacles that now inform your investment strategies today, or the way that you help your clients with investment strategies and wealth protection today?
There's a lot more failures than successes, that's for sure, which was my training ground, those failures. So, some of those small businesses I mentioned earlier, we certainly didn't get rich off any of them. They were certainly an example of real life is stranger than fiction. Some of the landlording stories and business owning stories we could have a whole separate podcast on, but none of them were great successes. A lot of them sucked a lot of my personal energy away from my main career in finance. So that was a learning experience that I'm putting to work now, right? That don't get distracted from your main career. And in this case, I have no distractions from Lansing Street Advisors. I have no investments that are sucking away any of my time. I have no side businesses or personal active real estate deals. So what I learned was, when I was younger and impulsive and chasing only money, I got my hands in too many things. And when you have your hands in too many things, you're not a clear decision maker. And that was what I learned the most from my failures. But there's an endless amount of failures and regrets that I wouldn't do over again. Some of them I would do over again, though, because they became some of my greatest learning experiences. But trading my own money, that was a distraction from my everyday too. I mean, these Robinhood investors you see now, that's going to end badly. I'd be dumbfounded if it didn't. It's very much like '99, where everybody went broke. Trading your own money, I can give you an endless amount of books that will prove that that's not the greatest way to make money, to say the least. It's the fastest way to light your money on fire. It doesn't feel that way when you get your early wins, but in the long term, it's not a good idea. So successes, was that the second part of the question?
Yes, I think it's just as important to focus and celebrate on our guests' successes just as much as our failures. So if you have a special story you'd like to share, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear it.
My biggest successes, without a doubt, were in my primary career. I think my trading career was a success. I hope. I don't know. I guess we got to ask some of the portfolio managers, people I work with, but considering I still have relationships with virtually all of them, speaking of building networks, my first job also helped me build out a massive network, and I'm in contact with most of the people I worked with. So hopefully that was a success for sure. And then, starting Lansing Street is my biggest success so far. We're only 6 months in because it's going exceedingly well, way ahead of expectations. We're extremely excited where we're going in the future. But at my age, being 50, I think money in general is secondary success, right? Really important to reduce your stress, meaning that getting control of your money and getting control of your finances is really important for a lot of reasons, reducing your stress. But hopefully it's second level success, and primary success is, what kind of legacy you're going to leave in the world? What kind of parent are you? What kind of person are you? So, I don't know. You have to interview my wife and kids on that one. I'm not 100% sure the answers the grades they would give me, but focusing on secondary of primary success is what I'm trying to do now. I think what most people my age are trying to do at this point. But my primary successes were definitely in the financial services world, and the education world. And we're really looking forward to seeing that continue at Lansing.
Great. That's so awesome to hear. So I'd love to hear more actually about Lansing Street Advisors. What do you guys do, and what are the goals at Lansing Street Advisors?
Yeah, so if you think about Mark Cuban, right, and everybody watches Mark Cuban on Shark Tank, and they were interviewing him on whether he was going to be president or run for president. And, Mark Cuban's got a personal staff at his office running all these businesses, but he has a staff taking care of his personal financial life, right? And that's really what we try to do at Lansing. We're here to educate, support, encourage prudent financial decisions, right? And the future of the business is going to a family office type thought process. So family office is, used to be super wealthy families would have a family office and have a whole office of people taking care of their families' investments, insurance, trust and estate, and so forth. That moved to multifamily offices, which, it would be same thought process, except they were taking care of, 10 or less families, super wealthy families' lives. Where we're going in the future, whether it's Lansing Street or anywhere else, I would tell your listeners that we're going, in my beliefs, what I believe is we're rapidly going to family office for the mass affluent. And what does family office mean? We like to say family office equals, if you think of an equation, investment consulting plus advanced planning plus relationship management. Now, investment consulting is the easy one. It's what most people think of when they read my blog or when they talk about the markets. What we're trying to do is help people make the smartest decisions around their investment portfolios as possible on the investment consulting side. And investing is a psychology game. It's not an IQ game. So, Vanguard has a study that a good advisor should add up to 3% per year to investors' returns, which is a crazy number if you compound it out over 30, 40, 50 years. And half of that is behavioral coaching, right? And that's a lot of what we try to do on the investment consulting side is really help families avoid bad decisions around their emotions. And then the second part of it's advanced planning, and there's a couple different buckets under advanced planning. One is wealth enhancement. So the more net worth you have, the more you lose track of your cash flow, right? So on the wealth enhancement side, we're trying to always lower your taxes and increase your cash flow. And we're trying to create investment products that help you increase your cash flow, like real estate, creating a passive tax efficient income, getting back to we're living into our 90s, healthcare inflation's going up 20% a year. Everyone out there, no matter if you ever call Lansing in your life, should be finding a way to create a passive tax efficient income. So that's the wealth enhancement side. And then there's wealth protection under advanced planning. That's insurance, right? Fires, floods, cybersecurity, all these things. Long-term care insurance cost is compounding 15% a year for long-term care. 2/3 of Americans will need long-term care. 1/3 of people over 85 will have Alzheimer's disease. Everybody I know is dealing with aging parents issues. All our clients, all my social relationships, everyone I know is dealing with aging parents. So wealth protection, insurance. So again, advanced planning, we have wealth enhancement, wealth protection. Third is wealth transfer, right? That's all your trust and estate, your will, what kind of legacy you're going to leave your children and grandchildren. 70% of estates lose assets in family harmony. 70% of estates lose assets in family harmony. 3/4 of money does not make it to the third generation in America. I want to repeat that one again, too. 3/4 of money does not make it to the third generation in America. So we're trying to bulletproof that money for the children, right? Especially so it's never taken away in divorce or litigation or bankruptcy or anything like that. Also under advanced planning is exit planning. We service a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. A lot of them eventually want to have a liquidity event and sell their business. We're here to help them do that in the most tax efficient manner and protect those assets once they are sold. And then we'll also consult on charitable giving. When I was a trader, we used to donate Boston and Philadelphia and New York, used to raise a lot of money for wounded warriors, and then you pick up the paper one Sunday and you find out 50% of the money was going to the management team of wounded warriors. So we'll do due diligence on charities and make sure you're setting up your charitable giving in the most tax efficient way possible. And then last is relationship management. All the buckets I just talked about, investment consulting, wealth enhancement, wealth protection, wealth transfer, exit planning, charitable giving, all comes down to relationship management, because all those buckets need to be talking to each other in order for families to get truly comprehensive planning. So we bring all those buckets together. We make sure they're all talking together, talking to each other in a fully integrated estate, tax, and risk management plan, right? The equation prevents the plan from failing due to premature death or forced early retirement or lack of sufficient personal insurance or poor estate planning, poor long-term care insurance planning. Everybody's worried about, am I going to find the next Apple, or am I going to beat the S&P 500 by 50 basis points? And it's all these other things that kill a family's long-term wealth. It's not usually, am I going to beat the S&P by 0.5% or 1%. It's all these other things I mentioned in that equation that are really the things you need to bulletproof your family around. And we are here to consult on all those buckets and make sure they're all talking to each other. Holy crap, that was a long-winded answer. Sorry about that.
No, I was fully invested in hearing that, especially, I'm 25. I don't have a family that I necessarily need to be saving for, or I'm not even thinking about saving up for them at this point. And you have me thinking a lot, Matt, now about just all of those different buckets and all of the things I, probably should be considering even at this age of 25, when it feels like that stuff's all so far out into the horizon for me.
The one thing I would tell everyone is the power of compounding is the eighth wonder of the world, right? Like, you need to be saving, like everybody's thought process is reversed, meaning how am I going to save money when I'm young? It's actually, you need to save a ton of money when you're younger. I'd encourage everybody to Google Richest Man in Babylon by Richard Russell, and a grid will come up with an unbelievable story. There's two investors in the grid. Investor A puts $2,000 or $2,500, I forget, into a IRA from the age of 18 to the age of 26. Okay, from 18 to 26, Investor A puts $2,000 or $2,500 in an IRA just for those 8 years. On the other side of the grid is Investor B, who doesn't start saving till they're 26 years old. That investor puts $2,000 in an IRA from 26 years old to 62 years old. So at 62 years old, who do you think has more money, Investor A or Investor B? Investor A. Did you see on this test, or are you Googling? You're Googling while I'm talking. This is a problem with technology. This is why all these kids taking online classes in college is suspect. But anyway, yes, you got it right, Jess. It's Investor A. So they don't put money in for 40 some odd years, and they still have more money in the end because they started earlier. And then don't be emotional around that. You should be really aggressive when you're your age or younger. Another fabulous stat, and I'm stealing this, I think, from Joel Greenblatt's interview recently with Barry Ritholtz on Masters in Business podcast, but the number one ranked mutual fund in the United States from 2000 to 2010 returned 18% a year. So they were compounding their money at 18%, right? So they're killing it. That's a lot of money at the end of 10 years that you made if you compound your money at 18%. The actual investors in that mutual fund, the average investor in that mutual fund that compounded at 18% a year for 10 years lost 11%. Because they inevitably bought at the wrong time, sold at the wrong time, didn't hold on to it. When things got volatile, like around elections like we're in today, they sold at the wrong time, bought at the wrong time. That's a sad story, and that's why I said earlier, investing is a psychology game. It's not an IQ game. It's all about controlling your emotions. So again, sorry to jump in when you started talking about being 25 and saving. I can't encourage young people out there enough. In my book on millennials that is coming out, we'll talk about this at length. you need to start saving as early as possible, and it's a massive problem in this country.
Yeah, well, you certainly have the hair standing up on the back of my neck and my ears perked, Matt. So, thanks for sharing those facts and those statistics. As scary as they may sound, I'm an emotional person, so you definitely struck a chord with me. And I need to start taking another look at those personal finances of mine and how I can start to best save and prepare for my own financial future. So speaking of financial futures, we have a lot of clients who will self-direct their investments. We work with people who self-direct their IRAs. Do you have any folks that you've advised that have self-directed IRAs, and how do you structure your strategies for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're believing in alternatives. We have a number of clients who use self-directed IRAs. In particular, we use real estate in some self-directed IRAs. Our real estate offering is a pretty big differentiator from others out there because we, on average, do 10 plus deals a year. Where geographically, we do deals all over the country. And we do a nice mix of, development deals, new construction, and what we call value add, where we're buying already occupied, call it apartments or anything, and raising the rents, and you're seeing dividends early in your investment cycle. So for certain, self-directed IRAs are a great offering because a lot of alpha generated returns are coming from the private world and from the right alternatives. There's a lot of bad alternatives out there. And in particular, in our current environment, we are looking at a bond market. Stock markets, we tell everyone, impossible to predict. Don't let your emotions get involved. The fixed income market, the bond market, is much more mathematically driven and predictable. And the bond market math for the next 5 to 10 years is pretty dismal. When you look at interest rates being at zero right now, inflation-adjusted interest rates being at zero right now, especially, bond market returns look abysmal for the next 10 years. And we are a generation right now, my age and baby boomers especially, facing something that no other generation in the U.S. has faced. And what we're facing is an expensive stock market, an extremely expensive bond market, an expensive private equity market, at the same time, longevity, living to 100 plus years old, and healthcare inflation increasing at 20% a year. Those 5 things are something no other generation has faced heading into retirement, heading into the second half of their lives. So that really dictates that we need to do some different things to generate returns and to give us a passive tax efficient income. And sheltered IRAs are one of the ways we could do that. Alternative investments to replace bonds are certainly one of the ways we can do that. That goes hand in hand with self-directed IRAs. So for sure, the next 10 years especially looks like, when we look at the public markets, we're going to have to be creative or where we're getting returns, period, and where we're getting safe returns, especially. I mentioned real estate because my investor base, especially in the way I use real estate, is protection of principal first, reasonable rate of return second, and the growth bucket, is really third. So, and again, looking at what public markets are expected to do just based on math, not a bunch of people sitting around in a room making predictions. We need to get more creative where we're going to find returns.
Yeah, definitely. I think I like the way that you really contextualize what makes traditional investments like stocks and bonds different from those alternative investments such as real estate or, even mortgage notes. They're tangible things versus that have math behind them versus prediction-based things. So, Matt, you talk about Lansing Street Advisors has 3 phases of financial life that guides its families and clients through. Can you discuss those a little bit more if you haven't touched on them already?
Yeah, accumulation, preservation, distribution, legacy, a part of distribution. There's these phases that we look at when we look at someone's financial life. But that goes hand in hand on another thing we do. And again, if it's with Lansing or if it's with anyone else, people are in need of heavy-duty planning, heavy-duty financial planning, and we do heavy-duty financial planning at Lansing Street Advisors for sure. And that is where you can really uncover some massive availability to grow your wealth and protect your wealth in a better fashion. I'll give you an example. We just had a client who was going to shut down an annuity that he signed up for 20 years ago, had $100,000 in it, didn't know what it was, just was going to shut it down, cash it in. We are not annuity salespeople. We're not insurance annuity salespeople or anything like that. But we did our due diligence on the annuity, and we realized that he did not need that money. In fact, he probably will never need that money in retirement or anything. And the rules of the annuity were that he could allow that investment to grow until he was 99 years old and leave it to his children. They would have to pay the tax at 99 years old, but he was already growing it tax-free for 20 years. Now he can grow it tax-free for another 49 years. When we showed him the simple math, compounding your money at 10% is 100% in stock. I mean, if we get the former stock market returns for the next 49 years, it's like $8 million at 99 years old, or $9 million. Don't quote me exactly on the math. I'd have to redo it. But these are kinds of things that are uncovered in planning, right? I mean, 529 plans, things people don't really even think about, or only think about in terms of saving for their immediate children's education. Like the availability to use those plans and put a massive amount of money away if in fact you had a liquidity event, or if in fact you have a ton of excess cash flow, and let that money grow tax-free and educate your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren from investing wisely today and sheltering that growth from taxes. I mean, there's just an endless amount of planning that goes into those phases. Every phase, accumulation, preservation, distribution, legacy, leaving a legacy, all have massive planning goals that are just, unless someone educates you, we tell everyone we're an education company, right? That's what we do. We're here to educate you financially. We help people make life-changing decisions, right? There's nothing more important in life than caring for tangible and intangible assets of the family, of your family. So the planning is massive. And when you talk about those 3 buckets or sometimes 4 buckets, every one of those has a massive planning component, and that is really what we specialize on. I mean, I'm an investment guy more than anyone else. I'm an investment person more than anyone else out, as much as anyone else out there. But I mean, a lot of the things we uncover that really are life-changing and especially financially are on the planning side, away from the actual everyday investments, insurance, trust and estate, cash flow, and I think we do a really great job at that, and we're only getting better at it. We're only working at getting better at it every day, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I think focusing on only improving, even at the advisory stage, is probably something really transparent and helpful that I'd want to hear from my own advisors. So that's really great to hear, Matt. So I'm interested about your writing side of things. You write a daily blog. It's titled View from the Top, and it focuses on industry research on market trends and technical analyses. So I'm curious then, what's your process like? What is a tool or a resource that you use to keep up with your knowledge of all these very changing, quick-paced industry trends, but also what does your writing process look like? How are you able to produce something of quality and of accuracy every day?
Yeah. So I'm an early riser to begin with, so and I usually spend, and I would encourage everybody to spend some time reading every morning, or if that's what calms your mind, or that's what is helpful to you in the morning. But it certainly is for me. I started writing the blog, the daily blog, believe it or not, back in 2011 or 2012 when I was a trader. I wrote it in-house for the portfolio managers and analysts. But in general, and then it became a public product when I became CIO of my former firm and entered the advisor world. We're deluged by information in America every day, right? I mean, it's like crazy the amount of information we're deluged by every day. You're a millennial, especially, younger people, just completely addicted to our phones and addicted to social media. And there's a lot of good things about that. There's also a lot of bad things about that. In the financial services world, especially, one stat I use and a slide we use is in one 8-day period, there was something like 600 market pundits on the 3 major cable channels. That's just the cable channels. Forget about every other social media outlet. In 8 days, there were 600 different stock market, bond market pundits on TV giving their opinion. That's massive deluge, right? And what View from the Top tries to do is, give you a quick read, enjoyable read on what's going on in the markets every day. I honestly, humbly did not think it would take off the way it did, and it's been great, and it lets me clear my mind every morning, and I'm going to be reading every morning anyway. To your question on where do I get my information, there's just a laundry list of websites, blogs. There's a ton of people who do good stuff out there. That's the positive side of social media and the internet and everything, right? Is the amount of knowledge out there is just stunning that you can tap into for free every day. And, writing's a community, an active community. It's an active sharing, and there's just tons of free community-driven information out there, especially around public markets. And I try to consolidate that for people every day and put it out. There's a daily letter that's more heavy to people that are really interested in the markets and everything. And then I have a weekly letter, Smarter in 10 Minutes, that goes out on Friday mornings that is more of a summary, and that is relevant to anybody interested in business, interested in, anything going on in the world, geopolitics, business, housing, real estate, private equity. So there's a Friday summary once a week piece that is a little less taxing on the heavy technical stuff that you may see in the everyday piece.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you definitely have a process that allows you to be able to appeal to pretty much everybody at every level, those who are high-level investors who think in terms of these market trends and can really digest those mathematic statistics, and then the folks who may be more interested in the global span of things. So it's really cool. I'm interested in the inspiration and the goal, without giving too much away, for your upcoming book, Matt, Top 10 Money and Life Considerations for Millennials. I'm 25 years old. I'm in this age group, in this generation. So I'm curious how you first got the idea to write, to appeal and to speak to this generation of people in our country right now. I'm really, if you can share any of that, that would be great.
Book's goal and inspiration for it. I'll do the inspiration for it first. The inspiration, I wrote an article you can find on my blog, readily available under Thought Leadership, probably under white papers under Thought Leadership, but you can find it. And there's an article there in regards to top 10 advice, top 10 life comments for millennials. I wrote this little short article, little beknownst to me when I wrote it on the way home on a plane from a conference. I wrote the article. I was at the conference and I looked around the conference, and I'm kind of an old guy now and I don't go to a ton of conferences, but I was at a conference and there's speakers going on and every single person in the audience is reading their phone. Nobody's paying attention to the speaker. So that kind of sparked this thought. I started writing just on that, and then it flipped to I'll just write top 10 advice things for millennials. So at the same time, I sent it out. It got by far the most hits ever. That response led to someone who was doing work for me at the time on the editing side saying, this is set up for a book, and that's a lot of hits, the hits you got. And at the same time, I was listening to a podcast, and I was listening to a podcast where the gentleman said most books come out of short articles, right? So that really, then I really started to think about it. Yeah, it was actually Michael Lewis on the podcast who wrote some of my favorite books, right? Liar's Poker, Moneyball, probably fabulous author who does what authors do best, or good authors do best, which is put difficult topic and subject matter into layperson's language And he was on a podcast, I don't know with who, and he said, all my books come out of articles, right? And I started thinking about it some more. So that's what inspired it. As far as, what's the goal? Millennials are the biggest generation ever, most educated generation ever, most diverse generation ever. They're about to get handed the reins of, in my opinion, the greatest country in the world, and they're about to dominate housing, business startups, public market investing, politics. They're about to take over the power structure of the United States in the next 15 to 20 years. And I think we should think less about credentialing on the education side and more about self-awareness and some of the things I talked about in the book, because it's all going to be about leadership from the millennials. And bad leaders ignore problems, avoid difficult discussions, discourage debate, act secretive and cagey in their operations, and are passive aggressive and cling to power. And we need good leaders, right? Good leaders address problems head on, communicate effectively, encourage team conversation, right? All the good things, commit, to what I call straightforward relationships. Everything is on the table, and delegate as needed, and we need leadership out of the millennial generation, not credentialing and management. And we need good managers, don't get me wrong, but I worry, being the most educated generation and the most technological savvy, and will that also translate into great leadership? And I'm sure it will. Everybody who becomes great leaders usually happens from their mistakes. So, my mistakes that I mentioned earlier, and from life experiences. So I have full confidence, but, it's just, and I want to inspire them to start thinking about first level success that I mentioned earlier, instead of second level success, which I talk about in the book too, because I think it's unbelievably important. The financial success is definitely important. The topic of money is more stressful than any other topic. I mean, dead bodies, sex, anything. Psychologically, money is more stressful than any of them. So it's very important to get control of that topic and do a good job at it. But they also have to start thinking about how they can be great leaders. And being a great leader is not easy. It's an exercise in self-awareness, and hopefully they can nail it down, and I think they will.
Wow. Thank you, Matt. As a millennial, I definitely am really interested in what the book has to say. I'm excited to get my hands on it when it's published. So thanks for sharing that with us. I hope any millennials listening also feel the same way. I think you're hitting on a lot of really great points. Self-awareness. You've talked about a lot of things that make up what have made you successful as an investor, what, you've seen in some of your successful clients. So I'm curious, what do you think makes a successful investor? What are some big pitfalls that new investors should avoid? And, what are some of the best characteristics that make up a successful investor, in your opinion?
Yeah, great question. I think you start with, everybody has to realize that the human mind is not wired for investing. I know that throws people off, and strangely enough, it throws the higher up the IQ scale you are, or the intelligence scale, the more that you're thrown off when it comes to investing. There's some other studies out there that Mensa Society are horrible investors. There's a book that I would recommend to anyone, Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. Just to give you another vivid example of me talking about my failures earlier in life, when, ego-driven, younger, doing a lot of trading. I read Daniel Kahneman's book, and that just flipped a switch for me. In his book, he talks about people that are in it every day, are at the most danger of having too much hubris and too much ego, because they think they know everything because they're in front of it every day. And that flipped a switch with me, like, holy crap, that makes so much sense. The book in general is a great read for anyone because it harkens back to investing being a psychology game and not an IQ game. But getting back to Vanguard and a good advisor adding 3% to returns, and half of that being behavioral coaching. I mean, Vanguard's bigger than the Bank of Japan. Nobody has a bigger database than them. And they are the ultimate do-it-yourself passive people, apparently. But if you look at Vanguard, the fastest growing part of their business right now is an advisor business, and they're using out everything they see their investors do that feeds up into this white paper they wrote about behavioral coaching. So what are the best character traits? I mean, number one, do less, which is, the best investors in Fidelity history. When Fidelity did a study, they found out were dead people who forgot about their portfolios. So don't overthink your portfolio. Make sure your fees are low, your tax efficiency is high, and you have a trustworthy fiduciary advisor. But do less. You need to control your ego. I had a hard time doing that, believe me, like anyone else. Control your ego, do less, recognize that the human mind's not made for investing and that it's a psychology game instead of an IQ game. The S&P 500 in a 70-year period, 70 years, has had 20% plus corrections, right? We just had crazy volatility with the COVID virus and everything, one of the most volatile markets ever, the biggest market crash in history, followed by the biggest rally in history, right? Who could have predicted it? Who could have gotten it right? The people who did get it right will get it wrong the next time. But okay, 70-year period, 20% plus corrections. In that time period, the S&P 500 is up 15,000%. 15,000%. The U.S. markets really, really, really work well. The problem is that your average investor is not participating in that. And I show all my clients and potential clients another chart where you see all the investment vehicles you can humanly invest in the last 50 years or so. Bernstein did this study. And the average U.S. investor is way down in the losing column with returns that trail not only that S&P 500 statistic I just got you, but virtually every other investment vehicle out there, they're also trailing. And it's a combination of a bunch of things, but a huge part of it is the emotional part, the inability to invest through different cycles in the market. And the market will treat you really, really well. Stocks, bonds, long-term, no question. And then there's just a ton of things to do on all those other buckets I mentioned to you earlier that really generate the extra return for you, making sure your insurance, trust in the state, cash flow planning, all those things are taken care of. So psychology game, not an IQ game. Do less, control your ego, avoid hubris. Bad decisions make good stories. I have a lot of them, but you want to make sure you control the things you can control. And focus on getting good advice around all the buckets in your financial life, not just your investment portfolio.
Thanks for sharing that, Matt. I am definitely someone who needs to be reminded to control the things I can control. And I wish I could tell some more people to, do less sometimes, not even just in a financial sphere, but just more in general. So, I'm curious, you have had the chance to travel and study in some very interesting global locations, as you said early on in this interview.
Sure.
Did you pick up on any lessons from your travels that you still utilize in your current strategies that you share as a financial advisor today?
Yeah, and it was fabulous experiences going to all those places. I mean, I was in China and Eastern Europe and those places right after 2008. A lot of what I gathered is back then, at least, they were trying to be their cultural version of America, right? So I never went to any of those places and wanted to stay or anything. I mean, I'm very patriotic to begin with, but you realize how lucky you are to be an American. And no matter how tumultuous our current times are, this is still the greatest country in the world. And we have a lot of warts and a lot of pimples, but we always figure out a way to make things better over the long run. And my interpretation of any international travel is I hope to do it for the rest of my life. It's unbelievably great. It gives you more of an appreciation for other people's circumstances. And it gives you, in my mind, at least through my lens, it gives you more appreciation about being an American, right? But any interaction, whether it be on a social class basis, race basis, international basis, with anyone that's getting us outside of our usual circle is a positive thing. And more than anything else, that's what that provided in my life. And then reading about it too. And reading too. I mean, the other part is just reading. I think maybe we'll get to this, but reading as much as humanly possible about things outside of your comfort zone also is extremely helpful. That was hand in hand with the international travel and learning other cultures and everything.
Yeah, I think definitely expanding your horizons can be so helpful in growing as a person, as an investor, all of those things. And I think reading is where a lot of it can start. You know, if you can travel, or if you can't travel. I know right now a lot of us can't travel. So are there any interesting books or anything you've watched lately? Stuff that I do want to focus on your reading, because you're such an avid reader too. Stuff that you've read recently, or things that, you know, were early inspirations that you read that you would like to share with our audience so that they could potentially get started in investing?
Some generalizations first. I would read anything you can get your hands on around behavioral finance, anything on basic psychology, anything on understanding your personality type. All that stuff's easy to find, right? There's lots of behavioral finance books. There's lots of basic psychology books. There's lots of books on figuring out your personality type and things like that. Then Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Millionaire Next Door, all those basics are really, really good too. Another generalization, anything written by Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger. I just recently read Charlie Munger's big book. I'm blanking on the name of it, but I'll come back to it. But Munger and Buffett especially, you know, you read Roger Lowenstein's biography of Warren Buffett, and you really realize that these are really regular guys that have all the personal issues that we all have and all the hurdles in life that we all go through. Buffett and Munger went through all those things, but they also have a massive amount of wisdom side by side with investment wisdom in their books. So anything you can get your hands on, the essays of Warren Buffett, the Warren Buffett Way, Roger Lowenstein's biography of Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger has a number of books that I would look into. Generally, on the hybris side, I would read Where Are All the Customers' Yachts? Scary but true that this was written back in the 20s, and nothing has really changed. You can read that book and apply it to today. Where Are All the Customers' Yachts? Hybris around the 2008 crisis, when Genius failed, Too Big to Fail. They're all great books. The 5 a.m. Club I recently read, as far as how to structure your day. And then Ego is the Enemy from Ryan Holiday. I've mentioned that multiple times. But I mean, the amount of investment books is endless. Anybody wants to email me, reach out to me anytime. I can give you a laundry list of investment books that hopefully won't be overkill, but there's just lots of basic financial books that are really, really good.
Thanks, Matt. I think that that's going to be really helpful information for people to get started and to expand their horizons in what they're reading. So thank you for sharing that. As we wind down, the last question we ask all of our guests is, and you've touched on a lot of this throughout this interview, Matt, but what would you say are your keys to building wealth and unlocking your financial freedom? Now, this doesn't have to be financial, but what is something that has informed the way that you look at success? I know you've talked about success at different points throughout this interview, so I'm curious if you could summarize it or boil it down to a couple of key factors. What do you think those would be?
So two parts to that answer. I guess the financial success, harking back to earlier, start as early as humanly possible. If I knew what I was doing prior to 25, I'd have way more money right now. I really didn't launch my financial career till post 25. So starting as early as humanly possible and saving like crazy, and starting to save even if it's $20 a week or $25 a month. That's kind of the simple part. Building assets and building real wealth always revolve around three things, right? Your public market portfolios, which is saving and investing, doing it as tax efficiently as possible, real estate investing, and then if possible, equity in a business. So your public market portfolios, your real estate investments, whether it be personal property, rental property, passively investing in funds like we have here at Lansing Street Advisors, and that are offered also through some of the self-directed avenues that you mentioned earlier, and then owning a portion of a business. And that could be done in a lot of ways. You could have a small partnership in a private business. You could get stock options in a public business. You can start your own business. But think in terms of how can I get equity, period, across all three of those buckets I talked about. Real wealth in the United States is built through achieving equity, ownership of assets, ownership of a real portfolio, ownership of real estate, real public markets portfolio, ownership of real estate, and ownership on the business side. That's how you're going to build real wealth. Now you can do it the other way, especially in two-income households. Just work your butt off, save like crazy, pay down your debt, live below your means. All those things are really achievable too. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but the three buckets I mentioned are how 90% of the wealth in the United States is built. Now, as far as informing the way you look at success, I mean, that's through a lens that everybody has to create themselves. But there's no doubt the whole idea that the financial part is secondary success and primary success is, are you happy in your life? Are you happy? Do you do a good job on the family side? Do you do a good job on the integrity side, on the business side? There's primary success, secondary success financially, massively important, but it's got to drive primary success. And, are you going to do something positive if you do have success, right? Or are you going to deliver something on the legacy side or to society that's a positive is the question. And that's what you should be asking yourself if you already had financial success.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for your time, your insight, and of course, your candor today. I think our listeners are going to take a lot away from the tons and tons of information you provided in this discussion today. So how can people reach you if they want to get in touch with you?
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Hopefully I did a good job. I really appreciate the time, and reach out. Anybody listening can find me on my blog at www.matttopley.com, matttopley.com, or lansing.adv.com, lansing.adv.com. That's my blog and my website. And they can contact us anytime through those avenues.
Great. And can you also share a little bit about the second opinion survey you offer? I know that's something you were telling me about.
Yeah, for sure. So everybody, especially today, getting back to living to 100, everybody gets a second opinion on the medical side, especially if they have serious issues, or as I mentioned, aging parents. You're always getting second opinions on the medical side. Paradoxically, almost nobody gets second opinions on the financial planning or the investment side. So at Lansing, we tell everybody, we're here if you want to do a second opinion survey with us. We will offer our discovery meeting where we take in all your financial data, and then we have a 90-minute interview with the family to really figure out what their goals are across a wide array of buckets. And then we'll do, the second part of it is we'll do an investment consulting second meeting where we'll give a preliminary plan, we'll give a high-level opinion of all those buckets I mentioned earlier. We'll give a high-level opinion of your investment plan, your insurance, your trust and estate, your cash flow management, what you want to do legacy-wise. And all this is free of charge, these first two meetings. And out of those meetings, three things will happen. We'll either tell you, hey, everything looks great, you're doing a great job, or your advisor's doing a great job and shouldn't change anything. Second thing that may come out of that, here, you might not be the right fit for us, but here's a couple things we would do if we were you, a couple minor changes. And the third thing that could come out of that is, we think we can make dramatic changes to your family's life. Here's the reasons why, and we think it's a good idea for your particular family and Lansing, the partner in the future. So there's no cost on your side. Think of it as same as a medical second opinion. And we do tons of them, and it's usually a good idea.
Thank you again so much, Matt. We really appreciate you taking the time today. For those of you listening, be on the lookout for upcoming CamaPlan events featuring Matt Topley. But until then, thank you everyone for joining us this week on the road to financial freedom. Tune in next week to hear more from experts who have paved their roads to financial freedom, or you can call CamaPlan today to learn more about how you can start to take control of your future wealth. Thanks, everyone. Thank you all for tuning into our podcast. We truly hope that you're enjoying your ride along the road to financial freedom so far. If you like what you've heard and learned, or if you want to hear more about certain topics that we may have already covered or have yet to cover, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. We would love to hear any feedback from you so that we may continue to make our podcast the best that it can be for you, our listeners. Thanks again, everyone, and remember, tune in next week to the road to financial freedom.